Hi, and welcome back to SEO On-Air. I'm your host, Aaron, and today we have Mike Schmidt, co-founder of Agency Coach, with us. We talk about how to start a new brand and get more leads, how to turn small wins into big budget projects, and FunnelHub, which is a strategic approach to boosting your business. Hope you enjoy. I think Anchorwave has been about for about 20 years,
Yeah.
and Agency has been now there for more than 6 years.
Yeah.
So could you tell us about the journey before getting into that, and how has the journey been so far?
Sure. Yeah. So I started my digital agency in 2003, although we didn't call it a digital agency back then. We just called it a web design company. I called it a web design company. I started it, maybe 6 months before I graduated from the university. I was living here in Tucson, Arizona. And although I grew up in California, I was looking for every excuse to stay here in Tucson rather than move back home with my parents and try and figure out my job prospects. And so I launched Anchorwave. It was a company just to build websites for the local market. And you think about what was happening. This was now 2003. If you think about what was happening in the world and in marketing and in the internet in 2003, this was before YouTube, before Facebook. I don't even think Google was the top search engine in 2003. It was probably like Yahoo or Alta Vista or something like that, which is kind of hard to imagine or believe there was a time like that. But that's what we were dealing with. And so I launched a website design company to build websites for local businesses here in Tucson because there really wasn't anybody doing that kind of thing. There was a few players, but like very small. And somebody with my skill set, knowing how to build websites, wasn't necessarily a super marketable skill inside of our community here. And so I had really very limited options when it came to what I was going to do with this. I had built my skills and my abilities in building websites because I had done a couple things in high school. This is, 96 to 99. I had built the school's website. And that was also a very novel thing at the time. A high school having a website? What is this about?
Right.
It was very odd and interesting to a lot to we had a web team, which was funny. I should have got a Letterman letter for that on my jacket, varsity webmaster or something like that. Right. And I took that and I built a website called the Magic Library. I was very much into building, very much into performing magic. And so I didn't have very much money as a high school and college student. So I thought, well, why don't I create a website where magicians could come and upload their tricks and how they do them. And then I would own the library. And so I would be able to learn all these things for free. It was like a really novel idea. But what I didn't realize is that I kind of turned one hobby into another. I turned magic into learning how to build websites. I learned how to program in Perl. I learned how to program in PHP, and I learned about MySQL databases, and that's really what led the foundation for me kind of getting into websites and into digital marketing. And so that was the early years of the business, and it was a bunch of years having started the agency that all we did was build websites.
And I mean, in that time, you've probably had a few hiccups here and there. Do you remember what were some of the major issues that you had and how you kind of overcame them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got into this business because I enjoyed building websites, not because I enjoyed selling websites, right? And so what I found myself in kind of a interesting position where I had this skill, I knew how to do it. I knew that there were people out there that could benefit from my services, but I just didn't know how to connect with them. I didn't know how to find them. And I found myself in a lot of very uncomfortable situations where I'm having to sell this thing to someone and ask them for money. It's a necessary step in order to, have a business and survive and be able to pay my own bills. But it's the big part that I just really, I didn't like it. And I didn't get into this business for that reason.
And how did you kind of get over that? Did you manage to, start selling it off, or did you feel like, no, this is going to be my thing now?
Yeah. So I held on to sales for a really long time. And, my dad was a salesperson. And so growing up, I would sometimes go to work with him. and he sold commercial title insurance. And I loved going to work with him, but I often thought it was like, man, this is such the most boring job in the world. Like I just don't,
Right.
I don't understand it. He did a lot of driving around, having conversations with people that I didn't really understand at a young age. But it left an impression on me that what sales really is service, right? And
Right.
we have these ideas in our mind that many of us, that sales is evil, or that you're taking from someone, or that you're cheating somebody. We all have that idea of that like slimy used car salesman in our mind, and we all don that cap when we think of sales. And what I had to shift and realize is that when I am selling to someone, that I'm actually serving them and helping them. Because the sales that felt the best were the ones where somebody came to me and said, hey, Mike, can you help me with this thing? Or, hey, Mike, what do you think about this? And then I would jump into consultative mode where I'd be like, oh, we could do this, and you should do this, and here's a strategy for fixing this problem and that problem. And their eyes would light up, and they'd be like, wow, that sounds so great, Mike. I'd love to hire you to do that, right? And like, it didn't feel like selling at all, right? It felt like helping. And so what I realized is that if there was ever a situation where I felt like I was that used car salesman, right, I had to switch my mindset and say, you know what? Like, I know I have a valuable skill, and I know that's worth money to other people, and that I need to think of this as helping them and serving them and helping them reach their goals, as opposed to my default mode, which was like I'm doing something that's so easy for me, that comes so naturally to me, that it must not be worth anything. And me charging them must mean that I'm robbing
Feels
them.
a bit wrong.
Right. It feels wrong. Exactly. And so that was a subtle shift. And I'll tell you, it wasn't like an overnight thing where I'm like, one day I've thought one way and I felt bad about it, and the next day I was like the best salesman in the world. It was a gradual series of things. They say that growth happens outside of your comfort zone. And, me being in sales at that time was a huge step outside of my comfort zone. And I'm glad I went through it. I'm glad I saw that perspective change, because if I didn't change that perspective, I can tell you that nothing that came after would have possibly happened.
All right. So I'm trying to start off, let's say, a plumbing agency in my city, let's say. I don't think we need to give it a name, but Piper's Plumbing Agency. How would I first start off to, let's say, generate some leads for this agency?
So one of the major breakthroughs that we had in our agency was how we were able to attract new opportunities into our world. Because for a lot of years, I just kind of went to the mountaintops and I shouted, I'm like, hey, I can build websites for you, or hey, I can do pay-per-click, or hey, I can do SEO, or hey, I can do any number of the things that an agency is known for doing. And what I didn't realize at the time is like, I was just like everyone else out there, right? Everyone else in the marketplace is just shouting from the mountaintops saying, here's what I do, here's what I know how to help, and here's the clients I serve. And you think about it from the buyer's perspective, there's really no advantage or point of distinction from one agency to another, right?
Especially if they're all saying we are the best agency.
Everyone's saying the best. If everyone's the best, that means that everyone's the worst, right? So from the client perspective, that's the way they're thinking. They're like, hey, everyone's just a bunch of liars out there. Everyone says that they do the best. Everyone says they do that. And especially if a company like a plumber had been burned before by an agency, that they're already looking at you as this new agency as someone who's going to rip them off, right? And so we have to enter the marketplace and talk with our prospects in a different way if we're going to expect to stand out. Recently I did a training talking about this, but oftentimes we lead with the service as opposed to what problems get solved. And so one example of this is, let's just take any random service. Let's say like local SEO, for example. What I like to do, rather than saying, hey, do you want to buy local SEO? I can get you ranking higher. I can send more customers your way. That's great, right? I like to instead say to a potential customer, hey, I like to take something that I know about local SEO, but I think they probably don't, right? And one idea of that is the fact that if those that are listening don't know this, that where you search geographically will change the results of what actually appear in Google, right? So if I'm searching here in this location and, 2 miles, 2 kilometers down the road, we've got some other person doing the same exact search, what might show up may be different. That's called, personalized search. Now, I know that, Aaron knows that, you probably all know that, but guess who doesn't know that, right? Our clients. A lot of local clients don't understand that. They may have experienced it and seen it, but they haven't really put that together. So you may think, okay, well, so what, right? I get that's a thing, right? Well, the importance in that is that we can now use that little bit of information to hook the attention of people out in the marketplace. So instead of saying, hey, do you guys want local SEO? Hey, do you want to rank higher? I can say, hey, did you know that where you do the search will change where you actually show up? And even though right sitting in your office, Mr. or Miss Plumber, that you're showing up there, that somebody else down the road might not see you, right? Do you want customers in that area? Is it important for you, like in all the areas that you serve, that you're showing up? And they'll say, well, yeah, of course. Well, you might not be. And I can run you a free report to show you exactly where you're ranking without you having to get in your car and do a search and drive a little further and get in your car and do a search and drive a little farther, right? And how about I run that report for you and I can show you where you're showing up all across town as opposed to just from where you're doing your search, right? Can you see that's like a much different conversation that we're having than just saying, hey, do you want local SEO, right?
Yeah,
we're engaging in a conversation.
Like creating that need as well. You can
Absolutely.
like instigating a demand for them.
Absolutely. And what we're talking about here, for those that aren't in the know, is like all we're talking about is we're going to run a GeoGrid report for them to show them. And these are tools that we use in our agencies every day, and we use them to track progress. But now we can take this thing and actually bring it to the front end and use it as a marketing strategy.
So in the same breath, can we also use this to somehow create, let's say, credibility and build up your reputation?
I mean, there's nothing more credible than pointing out something of value and providing value to somebody else, right? Because in the former example where we're just shouting from the mountaintops, saying we can do this service, there's no credibility being built at all. By engaging in these conversations and educating your clients in this way, you are creating the opportunity to build that relationship and stand out in a really big way.
So then what are some, let's say, other ways to kind of generate leads while also building up credibility too?
Cool. Well, we could take it a step further, right? And so when we talk about leads, right, because what we're just talking about is like once you have the attention of somebody, right? But the question is, how do you get to the point where you have their attention in the first place? So we could take these same ideas, right? And we have online versions of this, and we have offline versions of this, right? So we could create a lead magnet where we're providing the opportunity for someone to opt in for information about their GeoGrid report, right? So we could run an ad on Facebook, we could run ads on pay-per-click, and search to drive awareness to that, and now we can start to collect information and get people to opt in for this information, right? That would be one online way to do that. An offline way to do that, and this is in 2003, like search marketing wasn't really a thing, right? And so I cut my teeth on, what we refer to around Agency Coach as handshake funnels, which is basically, me shaking your hand and bringing you through a funnel process in the real world. That's what we call handshake funnels. And, that is where we can bring somebody through that funnel process face to face. In 2003, that's where I was spending most of my time. Agencies that start today, a lot of them automatically assume that they have to generate leads online, and you should, right? And there's a huge amount of opportunity out there, but the agencies that are willing, again, to, like the theme of stepping outside of their comfort zone, to go into a room of your target clients and meet them and have those conversations. A marketing fundamental is, if you're going to market your business, you need to get into the spaces where they're at, right? Virtually or in person. And I think most people today starting an agency kind of neglect and forget about the opportunities that are sitting in their own backyard. that can become their paying clients. And so it's a matter of taking that same conversation that when you're face to face with a business owner and they ask what you do, you say, I help clients get more customer activity. One of the ways we do that is through helping them make sure that they're showing up everywhere their customers are looking. Right? Do you know, Mr. Business Owner, whether you're showing up in all the areas? They don't know. Right? I could run that report for you. Now, of course, we could work on the script and the word tracks a little bit more, but you kind of get the point that leads are abundant. There are one of the biggest things that agencies come to our coaching business for is leads. They're like, hey, Mike, I need more leads. And I want everyone to know that there is an abundant amount of leads everywhere, right? The truth is you don't want leads, you want prospects, right? Because there's a difference. Leads are top of the funnel. They're people who maybe have expressed some interest, but really we don't know if they're qualified. Prospects are people who've raised their hand and said, Aaron, I want some help. I need some help from you, right? That's what we really want. We want sales conversations. And so the agencies that know how to turn a lead, right? Because those are abundant. They're sitting in meeting rooms out there. They're online. They're on Facebook. We can get them with lead magnets. The agencies that know how to turn cold leads into hot prospects will have as many hot buyers as they could ever want.
I was going to just ask you, what would be your 4 tips to transform your agency into a business machine?
Okay. Oh, yeah, of course. So we've been kind of dancing around these ideas here so far, and the idea is that every business needs to have a lead production system. They need to have a way to warm up those leads into buyers. They need to have a way to turn those prospects into buyers, and then they need to have a way to service and deliver the work, right? So those are the 4 categories. So we need to generate leads. Because remember, leads are just people who could buy from us. They're not necessarily interested in our stuff. Then we need to be able to take those leads and turn them into people who've raised their hands and said, hey, yeah, guys, I want your help. And then we need to have a sales system to actually sell them the thing, right? Because it's one thing for someone to say, hey, I want your help. It's a whole other thing for them to take their wallet out of their pocket, hand over the credit card and say, I'm ready to go forward. And then the 4th key is once they've said yes, how do you actually deliver the work? And this is really key. And Aaron, I think you'll particularly like this because this is very much your business, is that too many agency owners, when they sell the work, they assume that they always have to do the work themselves. I see so many burnt out. Another huge reason that people come to our business in our coaching business is because they have been successful at generating leads. They've been successful at closing them and turning everything into prospects. And then now they're buried in work, right? And, if we look at, the most successful businesses in the world, they've all figured out how to disconnect their ability to make money from the time that it takes. If you think about like Apple and the iPhone, for example, like there are, 20, 30, 50, 100 components that go into making that phone, right? Did you know that some of those components are actually made by some of their competitors? Samsung makes components for that, right? There are people who make
screen or something.
All the different components, right? And so do we think that Apple has enough resources and money in the bank to actually produce the iPhone on their own? Of course they do, right? But they strategically bring in outside resources to actually produce the thing that gets sold. And so they produce something, I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's something like $400 and change to produce the iPhone, and they turn around and sell it for $1,200, right? Yeah. And they're making money, even though they're having other people involved in that process. Another example is, outside the product space, think about home building, right? When you hire a general contractor, like they're not responsible for building all the, doing the drywall and pouring the concrete. They bring in the subcontractors, right? And so, if you were to hire someone to build a house and they said, hey, I can build every piece of it for you. I can do the footing work, and I can pour the concrete, and I can do the framing, and I can do the drywall and the plumbing and the electric and the roofing and the windows and everything. You'd be like, either you're really, really talented or you're not telling the truth, right? And so the thing is that agencies, I believe that agency owners are the most resourceful people on the planet, right? They know they look at something, they figure out how to make it happen, and they do that work for their clients day in and day out. That doesn't mean that makes it right to do that all the time. So agency owners get buried by the work that they're doing, and they think that they have to do it all on their own. And so, back to that fourth key is that, finding what we call leverage service partners, where you can have someone else do the work and only pay that leverage service partner when you have a paying client. Right? For a bunch of years when we were growing at AnchorWave, if we took on more clients, we would just hire more employees. Right? And I'll tell you what, capacity kills businesses. Capacity is very expensive because we would be really busy and everyone would have so much stuff to do and they'd be up to their eyeballs in work. And then we would hire someone else, and guess what? Their capacity would like drop in half. Now I have two people standing around at half capacity. And so the concept of outsourcing is something that became really clear to us that there are pieces of the business for us that we need to hand off and delegate and do. There are competent experts out there that know how to do that. What we do is we are client facing. Our agency is client facing. We are coordinating and managing the project, but the actual turning of the screws and the dials and the buttons and the knobs doesn't have to be someone that's on your payroll and on your team. And so we're huge advocates of bringing in outside competent resources. And the reason why we don't call them outsourcers, right? That's not the right word. We call them leverage service partners for a very specific reason, because a leverage service partner is someone that creates the opportunity to delegate work in a very concise way that you have a high degree of confidence that it's going to be done the way that you want and it's going to produce the results you want for the client. Right? Too many people have had bad experiences outsourcing work, and then it blew up, the contractor disappeared, they didn't do the work right. But so there's this very specific way in which we will engage with a leverage service partner to ensure that they actually are doing the work, and that furthermore, we're also paying the right rate for that. Because another thing I hear a lot from agencies is, well, I tried outsourcing, but it's like I didn't make any money doing it. It was too expensive. And it's like, I got to tell you too this way, like you as the agency should be making the lion's share of the profit in that scenario. Right. And so it's about charging the right rates, number one, but it's also about negotiating the right cost to deliver the work with that leverage service partner. And so if you look at kind of zoom back to what we're talking about here, it's about how do we build a system, a machine that generates leads all the time, whether you're awake or sleeping, right? How do you then nurture those leads into prospects who just raised their hand and said, hey, yeah, that sounds cool, I want your help, right? And that's happening whether you're awake or sleeping, right? And then taking those prospects through a sales system that gets them to buy your high ticket recurring revenue systems, products, services that you offer in your agency. And then once they're like, yeah, awesome, I want to buy that thing, that you have a fulfillment system to actually deliver the work. And that fulfillment system can scale up and down depending on how much throughput and how much you've turned on your machine at the lead side to turn on the rest of that. So that's the idea. This is what we call the digital agency operating system. And the training that's on our website goes into a lot more detail on that, but it's something that it's the way to do it. It's if you're wanting to have an agency that can run without you, because the way we look at it is, our motto is own your agency, own your life. Too many agency owners are trapped by the very businesses that they've created because they're stuck trading all their time for money. And even though they got into this because they wanted to create time and financial freedom, there's really all their time is buried in the business. And as far as finances go, like they're working really hard for a very little amount of money. And so the truth is that you can own an agency that serves your life, but you have to be on purpose about that. And I'll tell you what, Aaron, I wasted a lot of years thinking that this was just the way the business was. Oh, I was a freelancer. I was an agent. I wasn't really an agency owner at the time. I'm a freelancer doing some stuff, and I'm constantly just trading my time for money. And I only have so much time, and I can only charge so much for the time that I have. And so I just thought it was like a natural cap. But it turns out nothing could be further from the truth. And the proof in that is today I don't work day to day in our agency at all, nor does my business partner, AJ. Our CEO and their leadership team runs that using the operating system I just described to you. And it's something where a few times a year we're involved in planning and discussions with them. And they do a phenomenal job. And I'm insanely proud of the work that they've done. And so I know firsthand that this can happen for an agency. And I've also witnessed it happen for students of ours as well.
I think I kind of completely agree with that, because we've also heard quite a few people who kind of talk about when you don't really know what to do, there's no real point in trying to figure it out yourself and then do like a half job. You might as well hire an expertise who can do the job perfectly and then, get it done properly. I think that's the kind of approach most C-suite level people take. But a question when it comes to leveraging these service partners, how exactly can you choose a good one from a bad one? And what exactly are the factors you're making sure that throughout the service period that they have, they're keeping in line with what you need?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that a lot of people ask me. And if it's cool, I'll tell you a quick story about how we that I think really illustrates how to do this the right way. So when I bought my first house, I bought the house because it had a nice pool in the backyard. It had like a barbecue island, but the rest of the backyard was like a wasteland, dirt, and it was just awful, right? You could imagine it.
You can see the tumbleweed in the background.
Totally. I knew it had potential. I knew it had a ton of potential. And one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to put a small retaining wall down the middle of the yard. And on one side was going to be this lush lawn, and on the other side was going to be like this kind of gravel area. And so I'm a computer guy, and I don't know much about building walls, and so I needed to find someone to do this for me. So I had a company come over, explain to them what I wanted to have done, and they said, "Okay, cool, Mike, it's going to be $15,000 to do that." And I was like, I do not have $15,000 for this. I did not expect that at all. In fact, like I was envisioning, like I'd been to Home Depot and I'd seen the cinder blocks that are used, and I knew that they cost at the time like 50 cents a block. I'm like, I don't need that many blocks. How does that material cost turn into $15,000? That just sounds crazy. And so like obviously I didn't hire them, but what I did do is I decided to build a plan. So I drew a map of the yard. I measured out how long it was. I went to Home Depot and I bought like 4 of those blocks, and I stacked them in just the right position of where I wanted the wall to be, kind of like as a prototype. I took a bunch of photos, and then I wrote up a long description of like exactly what I was looking to do. I put that on Craigslist and I said, okay, here's what I want to do. Please reply with the rate that we're going to charge me, and give me a rough idea of how much you're going to charge to do that. And if everything checks out, I'll invite you over. You come look at it, and you can tell me if I've misrepresented anything, and you can change your rate if there's something that I didn't know and you should point out. So I had several different responses. The one that I invited over, he quoted me $1,500 to build this wall. I was like, wow. So I'm like, maybe he doesn't understand the scope of this project. So I said, hey, why don't you come over and take a look at it and tell me what you think? And he comes and looks at it, and he's like, yeah, no, this sounds good. $1,500. I probably do this in 2 days. So let's do it. And I'm like, awesome. So I hired the guy. And so while he's doing the work, he's like, Mike, like I've never had anybody give me that detailed of instructions. He's like, most of the time I'll come in, somebody says they want a wall, and they say they want it this high, and like it turns out, no, they want it that high. And they say they want this kind of brick. No, they want the other expensive brick. And so I'm constantly having to go back and forth. And it's not that the client's not unwilling to pay for those changes, just like there's a lot of my time. He's like, I knew I could be in here in 2 days and give you what you want and be out, and I'll be on to the next job. Because I had a window in my time where I could make this happen. And so it was really eye-opening to me to figure out, okay, in one scenario it's $15,000, the other one is $1,500, right? Like how could it be so different? And it really helped me understand the value of being specific in what you want with somebody you're going to outsource work to. Yeah. And that is what I brought into the agency. So rather than me coming to you and saying, hey, I need SEO, right? I could be more specific and say, listen, I want to do SEO, but I need some help with citations. I need some copywriting. I need some keyword research. I need, some link building, and not just link building. I need these kind of links, and I need this kind of outreach. And I could be very specific to design that, right? If I knew how to, ask for that. And so I was able to create what I called kind of like an agency productized recipe for each of our services. Like, here's all the ingredients that go into everything we do, and be able to describe exactly that to that person. And what that does to the let's say the SEO contractor or the blog writer or whatever else, it gives them a high degree of confidence that you're not going to be one of those pain in the butt clients, that they're going to give you exactly what you want.
Yeah. You also come off as someone who knows of what they're doing as well.
Yeah. And so that was a huge help. That's huge in negotiating a good rate with somebody else, because they're not going to want to know, they're going to want to know that you're not going to be someone who's going to cost them way more money and then they're undercharging for the work. So that's a key piece of it. And then, quite honestly, the only other way to really know is to hire them and see them in action. And I see a lot of people that want to avoid the pain of doing it wrong. And so they therefore never hire anyone to outsource, or never hire a leveraged service partner. And that's just the wrong way to do it. You've got to invest some dollars in that person doing the job to see what kind of work they're going to do. It doesn't mean you have to pay them like a giant sum of money to do all the work, but you could give them a small project to see what to do. Or even better, find 3 competent leverage service partners where you give them all the same job and evaluate them based off of who has the best communication, who does it the fastest, who's able to do it without asking you a bunch of questions, right? And what's your experience in that? And that is I'm sorry, but that's the only real way to know if someone's going to actually be good. But I think you can do a lot of prep work to help ensure their ultimate success and yours.
And I think along with that prep work, you will also be prepared if you do take that risk and it ends up bad. You at least knew beforehand that it could end bad, and you're taking those contingency plans too. But a question that I have is, can the same approach be applied to when trying to sign on new clients?
Yeah. I think, if we look at what we just talked about, we said being specific about what needs to get done. And then, the other part was trying them out. So I think very much so on the front end from a sales process, giving clients a clear understanding of what it is you're doing and what the goals are is the number one way to both attract the right client, but also sell them for top value. One of the proudest things I've experienced in my agency life, and now I've got to experience it again through seeing some of our students implement the same thing, is that at the end of a sales presentation with a potential client, the client saying to me, "Wow, that was an incredible amount of value. Like, you guys have given me a better visibility and insight into where we're at, what's not working, and where we need to go than anyone else I've ever talked to." And then the icing on the cake usually is when they say, "You guys are the most expensive, but we're still hiring you." Like, nothing feels better than that, right? Because what that's showing you is that you've adequately shown a client that the amount of value that you're providing, right? Because they say that money, sales is an exchange of value, right? There's value in the dollars, in the cash, and the money that they're going to give you. And there's value in the services that you provide. And the client needs to think that the cash that they're holding on to is less valuable than the thing that you're selling to them. That's when that magic recipe comes and that exchange happens, right? And so our job is to provide enough visibility into what we're doing to increase the value of our services to the point where is what we call it's a no-brainer now. It's like, it's in our community. It's like hashtag no-brainer. Like, that's that moment when the client was like, "Yeah, it's a no-brainer to hire you because I see it and I see exactly what you're going to do." And I think that just like we talked about the clarity in a leveraged service partner and giving them clarity of what to do, you want to give your clients the same kind of clarity of what you're doing as well.
Okay, so the question that I was going to get to is, could you maybe rate a few of these AI tools, and then maybe our viewers and listeners can go check them out?
I wish I could grade those and give more visibility into that, but I'll tell you what, I'm very much a student of AI right now than an expert.
All right, but you are, let's say, a master in the FunnelHub, though, right?
That's right.
One question is, before that, do we have time to talk about this? Because I'm pretty much going to ask you to give me everything about the FunnelHub.
I'd love to.
Right, so tell me everything about the FunnelHub. How did it start off? What exactly does it aim to do? And maybe what is the future for it?
Yeah, 100%. So we, my business partner AJ and I joined Russell Brunson's Inner Circle the end of 2015, and so at the time, like ClickFunnels was very much a smaller company than they are today, and the kind of attention that people had around like their marketing was very much different. And so we showed up to a room in Boise, Idaho, about an hour before the event was going to start to go to one of their masterminds. And in the room, we were the first ones there. We were there because I was just nervous and I didn't want to be late, but we were very much early. And on the tables were name cards of all the people in the room. And so we did what I think a lot of people with free time on their hands and access to Google would do, is we started Googling people in the name, because these people had all paid a lot of money to be in this room, and so they must be people of consequence. And truthfully, I was just very excited. And what we found was really interesting. Like in a lot of cases, we found nothing about these people, like there were ghosts on the internet, or we found their high ticket funnels, but couldn't really tell what they were doing. Or in some cases, we would find their competitors, like their competitors were ranking for their names and their products and things. And so it was just like kind of a puzzling experience. And so that led to us digging into what we ultimately figured out and fixed with the FunnelHub, which is, we've done a keyword research for people in that room, and we found that, like in one case, there was a person that had over 1 million searches that were happening per year for her brand name. So it was like her name, her courses, her products, her services, but there were competitors showing up instead. And what we started to realize is that, well, hey, why is this happening? This person's really successful, but there's a hole in their bucket. And what we realized is that, what if we could take that traffic and put it back into their funnel? And the reason why many of these people were neglecting what was showing up on search was that they were so focused in on running a funnel-driven business and having success with it that they weren't really thinking about what was happening outside of that. And so this was a huge epiphany for us, where when we pointed out this to these people, they said, well, how do we actually fix this stuff? And so that's where FunnelHub came into existence, is that we figured out not only how to redirect that traffic, but the ideal and number one place to take that search traffic is put them back into what we now call a FunnelHub. And the number one job of a FunnelHub is to receive that traffic and get that traffic back into one of the funnels where they belong, right? And so a lot of people ask me, the number one thing they hear when they hear that, they're like, well, like, isn't it just a website, right? They're like, well, you're just talking about building a website, and the job of that website is to get people back into the funnel, to rank that website and get people back into the funnel. And the answer is, yeah, it kind of is, but it's kind of like calling a Ferrari a car, right? Yes, a Ferrari is a car, but it's an awesome car, right? And there's a specific set of things that are done in order to make sure that it's performing at a high level. Well, FunnelHub is very much the same thing, that the job of the FunnelHub is not just to be a website where people find if they're looking for you. It's to make sure that traffic makes its way back into the funnel.
And how long has FunnelHub been available for people to use?
Yeah, so we started building them in 2018, 2019. The story goes that we had the idea. We had done a couple presentations to Russell's Inner Circle about it, and people were just kind of like amazed and shocked at the same time, and realizing that they had been leaving all this traffic on the table. And so we actually approached a friend of ours through that community named Stephen Larson, and we said to Stephen, we're like, hey, can we build a FunnelHub for you? And we just wanted to do a proof of concept. And so he let us do that, and it was transformative, because at the time there was another Stephen Larson who was like a psychologist and author that was showing up, not the guy that we all know and love. And so when you were searching for Stephen's programs and courses and books and all those kind of things, he wasn't showing up. And so building the FunnelHub helped him rank in that spot. He was able to redirect that traffic back into his funnels, and he saw a 500% increase of that traffic being redirected, which is incredible. So we took that story and that experience. AJ and I had an opportunity to meet face to face with Russell Brunson, and we kind of talked him through a couple of the ideas. And quite honestly, we were a little nervous at the time, because like we were basically going to tell the guy that's declared to the world that websites are dead, that he needed to build a website. And so I was really, really nervous about that meeting, knowing what I was going to tell him and what his reaction was going to be. And so I told him, we were about 3 slides into our presentation with him, and he like says, "Hey guys, I got to stop you." And I thought for sure we were just going to start yelling at us or something. And he says, "I have no idea where you're going with this exactly, but I already want to give you money." We're like, "What?" And so by the end of that meeting, he purchased a FunnelHub from us, and we ended up building one for him and teaching his team how to do that. Fast forward, that led to several opportunities for us to speak at Funnel Hacking Live, teaching about the concept, and it also ultimately led to them bringing that FunnelHub concept directly into ClickFunnels 2.0, so people can build their funnel hubs inside of that platform as well. So now even though we built a WordPress website for Russell, now he can officially have his on his ClickFunnels platform.
So kind of like, to correct me if I'm wrong, this funnel hub will pretty much improve your branding, can also help in terms of conversion and generating leads as well.
Yeah. So think of it this way. So we talked a lot about trust so far today, and you think about the people who are moving through your funnel. There are people who trust you in that funnel, and there are people who don't, right? The people who trust you, let's say that one of those people went to a webinar, and at the end of the webinar, they bought or they didn't. In our experience, like if we had 10% of the room buy at the end of one of our webinars, we'd be pleased with that, right? But what about the other 90% of people who were there but didn't buy anything? Well, the thing is that they have not overcome the trust tipping point, right? There are a series of things we each need to overcome in order to get to the point where we're ready to take our credit card out of our pocket and hand that over. And so the things that 90% of people were doing when they didn't buy, well, guess what they are doing? They're searching for your products. They're searching for you plus scam and reviews. And they're kind of like an attorney or a judge trying to make a decision on a case. Like they don't care whether you're guilty or innocent. They just want to get enough information to be able to make the choice as to whether or not you are one of those two things, and then close the file, right? And so it's our job as businesses to give the people who are skeptical, and rightly so, about who we are and what we do and whether or not we're worth being given their money. We need to give them enough information to make that decision. And so when they are searching, when they are looking for evidence of your amazing awesomeness or your scams, whatever it may be, that they're finding the right information, that they're finding the truth of what you do. And a funnel hub is a key place where all that information is contained, and ultimately where we want them to land.
All right. So I think I'll have to maybe take a bit of note of that and do that myself as well. Trying to figure out a good funnel hub for my...
And I'll say, I've been throwing around like large search numbers, right? 1 million searches for branded terms, right? And so a lot of people hear that and they think, well, then I must not need one, or I'm not ready for one yet. And I say that, like, you and I know that once a search happens, we can never get it again, right? It's not like we can go back in time and be like, oh, that person who searched yesterday, last week, last month, let me give them a better experience, and let me capture that person. And so the opportunity, what this is really talking about is what's called the shadow sales funnel, right? So your shadow sales funnel is growing in proportion to the amount of traffic that you're sending to your funnel. And so even if you had one search that turned into a paying client, like that question, is that worth it? I know in my early days of running traffic that, especially when we were doing webinars, one sale compared to no sales was the difference between us continuing forward and giving up. And so we have to be aware of what are people finding about us, and they need to find something that is ensuring and giving them confidence in who you are and what you do.
All right. So this basically the book question that I still have, and I was going to ask another one. What is basically the future of FunnelHub and you? Do you think we can squeeze in those two questions, or?
Sure. Yep.
All right. Well, what is the future for Mr. Mike Schmidt and FunnelHub?
Yeah.
Along with those agency coach as well, I guess.
Absolutely. So, FunnelHub, there's an amazing opportunity on a couple different levels. Of course, what we've been talking about is the concept of you're building a funnel hub for your own brand. But as an agency owner, right? There's a huge amount of opportunity to do this for other people. In fact, we've partnered with Russell Brunson to put together a course around teaching agencies how to do exactly that. So the future of FunnelHub is bright. Like, we're very much at the beginning, early stages of this. What we haven't really talked about is the idea that, we have not only an opportunity inside of the funnel-driven business community, we also have a huge opportunity inside of the local business market. Right. And when we sell funnel hubs to local businesses, we actually change the name. We call them marketing hubs, just because we find that there's less resistance to the idea of a funnel. Like, there's more and more local businesses every day that understand and get what funnels are. But we kind of bring the same concepts to the local market and have a little more success by calling it a little bit differently. But there's a huge opportunity for agencies, not only helping funnel driven businesses with the concept of the funnel hub, but also with helping the local market and other businesses as well. The future of agency coach is bright. There's a new agency needing help every single day. Our mission and our goal is to help agencies, own their agencies, truly be the owner, as opposed to it feeling like a job. Like, really own their agencies so they can own their life. And it's really one of the most rewarding aspects of my career so far is not just having seen my own agency's success and benefiting from that, but also seeing some of those same lessons being deployed in other people's agencies. It's funny because for a lot of years, I just assumed that everyone else had the same sales systems and processes and the way they thought about running their agencies. I'm like, well, we have our version and they must have theirs. Well, it turns out there's a lot of folks out there that don't have these systems. And it's been really, fulfilling to kind of give these systems and put them into other agencies that are having issues and roadblocks. And it's been incredible.
I think it kind of ties back to what you said right in the beginning, where it doesn't really come from a place of, making profits or just doing another deal, but more of like, how do I really help these people do better at what they anyway do?
100%.
So to that, I say congratulations, and I hope you go on.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, yes, Agency Coach is a business, and we are a business because we are serving the people in our community at a very high level. And they see, just like we talked about, that the cash that they're holding on to is less valuable than the things that we're bringing to them, and it's giving a lot of hope. It's reducing stress. It's creating a lot of impact in the communities they serve, and that's just amazingly fulfilling.
Yeah, and if there are any potential clients listening in, I for one was super duper convinced, and if I had my own agency, I would be signing on as quickly as I can. But to kind of again tie a bow on this whole thing, could you maybe give us a more casual talk on just the 3 books that you would recommend?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I did prepare. And so I actually have those 3 books sitting on my desk here. So I think the first book that I'd recommend to anybody who is starting any business, but especially agency owners, is The E-Myth Revisited, which is, I don't know if it's going to focus in on here, but The E-Myth Revisited is an awesome book by Michael Gerber. It talks about the difference between, what it really means to own a business, and the fact that when you start a business doing something, it's about there's more than just the building of the websites. There's more than just the doing of the SEO. There's a lot more responsibility that comes with building a business, and when you accept and own that, is what gives you a pathway forward. This is a book I've read over and over again. I read it early on in my business career, and I've read it many times since, and it's been something that's been really cool. Second book is Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. This is a definite favorite of mine because guess what? Business is full of a bunch of hard stuff. Life is full of hard stuff, right? If life was easy, we'd all just be laying around in a pile doing nothing, achieving nothing, right? Because life is hard is why we can achieve great things. And this book puts a lot of those challenges into perspective. So if you're having a tough time right now, if you're just like unsure what to do, I highly recommend that book. And then the last one, this is kind of an oddball. I'll tell you what, I picked this up in the bargain bin walking out the door of the Barnes & Noble. It actually still has the sticker on it. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. Still has the $4.98. This is Lead or Get Off the Pot by Pat Croce. That's all out of focus. There we go. It's a terrible title. It really is. It's like the worst title. I could see why it was in the bargain basement, bin walking out the door. But man, it is a really strong book. It really gave me early on the idea of how to take my business and break it into actionable sub steps. And a lot of times, if you're trying to accomplish something in your agency, whether it's like putting a lead system in, or developing a sales process, or hiring a leverage service partner, that can feel like a really big task, right? How do you break those into subtasks? And then it's just kind of colored with a lot of other like inspirational story from his career about, how he did some things that were pretty insurmountable. And so I've always just really appreciated that book. And it's one that I don't think I've ever heard anybody recommend before, but it's one of my favorites.
Like, we've had quite a few guests talk about books, and some of them have been repeated here and there, but this one really got my attention. I was like, wait a minute, this is the title of a book? Cool, let's note it out and go read into it.
Yeah, it's worth checking out. Yeah, one day I hope to get to meet Pat and tell him that to his face. So,
all right. So, thanks a lot for the chat. To be very honest, I think I've learned a lot more than the entire time I've done my podcast. So again, I'm eternally grateful for all that. Another thank you to kind of explaining it in a more easier, digestible manner. We do have other people who kind of gave the long form version, but you've given like a very simple version for at least people to kind of get the whole grasp of it. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for watching that episode. I hope you enjoyed. For more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe.